Hey everyone, hey Rohan, I can see you in the chat. I'm not sure. Oh, it's pretty late in India. Thanks for joining in. So yesterday we spoke about like how hey Shravan, hi. So yesterday we had a little bit of idea about what NX is, and then we created a small app, or you can say small project using NX and Angular, right? So we saw a project structure where we had a single project, but most of the enterprises don't just start with a single project. I mean, they do start with a single project, but they don't have. They have a vision that, there, of course, the number of projects will increase in future, and then scope of the project will also increase, right? So most of the enterprises uses a different approach, and we will see that today. So we'll uh, not use the same project which we created yesterday, but a new repository. It is called integrated monorepo. So if you remember, during project creation, we had two options, and then we chose uh, the first one, which was standalone. And today we'll go with integrated monorepo, and then we'll go through this project structure. So, and this is the project structure which was available by default in past, and now like many project like can be an hobby project. That's why NX also came up with this idea that, okay, why not to just give a similar structure which Angular CLI gives, because you are just going to have a single project. So let's create a new project, and then we'll see. Npx create next workspace, and we are going to use the latest version. If oh, sorry, I'm not sharing my screen, so let me share entire screen, and I think this is screen 3. Yeah, I realized that. So, and yeah, it's here. So we have this command. We use the same command from yesterday, so we'll use let's create an X workspace latest, and this time we are going to use the integrated workspace. So let's see, integrated monorepo approach. Sorry, and okay, so of course we are going to use Angular, and then use the standalone yesterday. So single project, and which makes the installation fast, but we are not going to use that. We are going to use the integrated one, and for today we will give it a different name. So let's say if I have my own brand, so let's say my organization name is, of course, I'll just try to name it as uh, workspace. So I'll say, okay, this is my workspace. You can name it on your name. So, and then default format, of course, I'm going to use SAS, because most of the project I work with, we use SAS. Standalone component, as yesterday we mentioned, we are going to use Angular 16, and we are going to go with standalone components in your application. And do you need routing? Yes, of course we need routing. Do we need faster builds? As mentioned, I mean, we will explore more about NX, this all features in future, but right now we'll just disable it. So because if I install it, I have to talk about it. So I don't want to introduce that right now. And let's have this. So we have integrated monorepo, application name, I just gave it as my name. And then we have default style sheet SAS. We added that we want standalone components, so it will create an application with standalone APIs, and it is creating the project. Let's go ahead and open this, because it's already probably created. So still creating new workspace. Let me see. It's created inside Angular. Okay, cool. See, it takes a little bit more time than the standalone one, which was like yesterday. You saw that it got created pretty quickly, and now it's taking a little bit of time, but hope it doesn't fail. In Workspace, done. So now we can see the workspace. Let's see. Mhm. Where is the project created? Ah, okay. Sorry. So it took the name as organization because probably I clicked on some default button. And hmm, okay, anyways, you can change it later on, but I don't want to invest much time. So probably just clicked on org and it took the workspace name as org. Yeah, where would you like to create your workspace? Actually, this is the folder name. This is the root folder name which gets created, and I just forgot about it. I just clicked org. So that's why this folder name is org. And anyways, I mean, doesn't matter, right? So we just need to worry about our project structure. So let's open it. So help, and let's go. And I think we should open folder. It was named org. Okay, so this is the folder, and you can already see there are more folders than the yesterday's project, right? I mean, so we have something called apps, we have something called libs, and then we have something called tools. And we also see that the files which we had like here. So we have tsconfig base, and then there is no app, there is no spec, because all those files are actually moved inside the apps folder. And to create libraries, if you remember yesterday, whenever we used to create a library, it used to be created in the root, right? I mean, we created a home library and it went into the root. So that's what a standalone project structure looks like. So but with integrated monorepo, as you know that your application is going to grow, your number of applications may grow, your number of libraries may grow. So you don't want like your files to be just scattered around, right? I mean, all the files should which is available in the root. So this integrated monorepo approach gives you a standard way where you can keep your projects and where you can keep your libraries. So all the apps which you create goes here, all the libraries which you create goes here. And this is the structure which you will find in most of the enterprises where NX is being used, irrespective of the technology. I mean, I'm not talking about just Angular. Any technology, they might have the similar structure. So let's go through the files which we have, right? So this is tsconfig.base, which will be extended by everyone inside your monorepo. So you will have a common TypeScript configuration for your entire team. So, of course, when we talk about integrated monorepo, we are talking about multiple teams now. We are not talking about a single project. We are talking about multiple teams who are like coordinating inside your monorepo. And of course, NX brings best tooling, right? I mean, available. So you don't have to build someone else's project in case you are working on project A and someone also has a project B. So you don't have to like go ahead and build something from project B. And you can define the boundaries as well, so you don't like end up using something from across the apps, which we should not. I mean, we'll of course go through them in more detail. So of course, this is tsconfig base, which will be extended by everyone. all the future apps, future libraries. You have README where you can put information. Package.json, you can see you have uh, all the packages which are defined here. You already get Prettier, you get Cypress, you get you get Just, and you also get ESLint, right? So all these are available by default when you create an NX monorepo. Log file, as I mentioned yesterday, you should use it in case you are working with multiple teams. So all the packages which anyone adds or updates, it's available. I mean, so everyone uses the same package. And nx.json, it is used by nx. We have some configuration, as we said. Yeah, we'll go through them in future as we touch those topics, right? So this is just configuration. So we have just preset and just config.ts. You will see that, okay, probably this configurations are actually extended by the apps and libraries which we'll create, because of course they don't have to define all this configuration again and again. So this is like your root level configuration. So you have Prettier as well. So these are the directories which won't be formatted once you're in Prettier. ESLint RC, as we mentioned. So we have this ESLint rules, and NX already has all the basic rules which is available as part of Angular and Angular TypeScript. Sorry, Angular, yeah, TypeScript ESLint as well. So all those rules are actually extended already by NX. So you don't have to define it again and again. We'll see. You will also get some error when you try to break those rules. And this is most important because we'll talk about this rule as well. Very important in case you are working on enterprise with multiple projects. ESLint ignore, of course, this. None of the linting rule will work on node modules. Editor config, I mean, this is, of course, you can go ahead and change it in case you want to bring editor configuration from any other editor. You are free to do that. You just can go to this uh, editorconfig.org and see which configurations are available. Libs, this is the folder where we will create libs or libraries, as we say, and uh, we'll see how we can utilize those this, right? I mean, and then this is your project, and this is your end-to-end project, which is using which uses Cypress by default. And I think, as we saw yesterday, it uses Cypress 12 for this. Yep, so it's Cypress 12. And let's see our project structure. So now if you see from yesterday's project, we have, okay, something is, okay, I'm still online, right? Yeah, cool. So if you saw yesterday on a single project, we had this tsconfig spec file on the root because we were expecting only one project. But here we can have multiple project inside apps. So we have tsconfig spec, which is specific to this application. Again, tsconfig.json, which extends everything from the root. So if you see, this extends the base one, and then it has its own configuration as well. So similarly, editor, I mean, if you need any configuration which only should work on in the editor, you can actually define it here. It has no impact on how your files are compiled. So in case you don't want to go with strict mode, you can make your editor configure use strict mode. So you see all those strict mode errors inside your editor and not when you compile your project. As I mentioned, I'm not going to go into like basics of Angular or TypeScript because there is already a course. Let me just go through and I mean show you that quickly. So in case you're joining today, and you can go to YouTube and just search for Angular getting started. And this is the course, the first one, which is on free code camp. So this is 17 hours course, Angular basics. You will see everything. And if you're wondering what this Balvir is doing here, so my daughter loves Balvir. So but yeah, this is the course you if you want to go through the basics of TypeScript and Angular. And then you have project.json. So this is like, if you have been to Angular, if you have never created an Angular project, that's absolutely fine. But if you have created, this is like similar to what Angular.json has. So it has all the targets, like what should I mean, how to build your project, how to serve your project. So to do everything, you have all this configuration, or This is called actually executors. So all these executors are actually available here. And so let's say if you run test, actually it's going to use the just internally. If you're going to serve, it will just use Angular's built Angular dev server, and then same for build as well. So it's going to use build Angular browser. So all these configurations are defined, and this is your development mode, and this is your production mode. We'll see what those are. We don't have to worry about it right now. And as I mentioned, so every project will have just configuration as well, which will extend the root one. So you can see here there is a preset, and then it actually extends this preset which is available inside root. And uh, we have eslint.rc.json. I mean, every project or the library which you define, they will have their own ESLint RC file where you can override any styles, sorry, not styles, but any ESLint rule you want to. So you can override it here. It actually says overrides. So in case whatever linting rule you define here actually are overridden. And you can, of course, use the default one as well, right? And let's go through the project structure. This is similar as of Angular. You will not see any difference apart from test setup.ts. I mean, in case you created a project in past using Angular CLI, Angular CLI used to use Karma, and now it has support for just as well, experimental support, not the full support, but they have also created an executor. This is what I mean by executor, this one. So they have also created an executor for just. So that's an experimental one, and probably in future streams I can show you that as well. But here as nx uses just by default, so that we get the configuration related to just. So we get test setup.ts file. Style.css, it is like your root style file. I mean, you can define all the global rules here. Main.ts, it's like entry point to your Angular application. So once you create your build, this is the file from where all the files are. This is the first file which gets compiled, and then it creates the trees and a lot of things which we'll anyways learn about. So main.ts, then you have index.html. Of course, at the end we are using, we are writing an web-based application. So this is the index.html which will be served once you serve your application, or you serve or build your application. Favicon, of course, this is something which is used by browsers. So if you go to any website, let me show you what, in case just if you don't know what favicons are. So here, right, you can see this small circle in Chrome. That's actually your favicon. And I think I have just like used my own pic here as a favicon. So this is my blog. So in case you are interested into contributing to open source, I just recently wrote a blog post about how to contribute to open source, and it actually takes or also takes the shares the experience of many developers whom I have been following from many years, and they have been a great contributor to open source. So you can also see this, read this blog post. So santosh.dev, this is my blog, just a shameless plug. Yeah. So assets it's where we are going to keep all the assets. I mean, if you have any images or any PDF files which you want to load in later, or if you have some JSON files which you want to load, you can keep everything into your access folder. This will be like bundled when you create your build, and this will be also available once you serve your application as an assets or static contents, right? I mean, as a static content, that's the best way to define it. Then we have app routes. So of course, and with an Angular application, or once you create a web page, you are going to have navigation, right? I mean, you will be you will have may have like about us, you may have contact us, all those section, right? And as we are going to create an e-commerce page, we will have product details. So of course we need some navigation, so we'll define all the navigation into the routes. So Angular already has a package for routing. We saw it yesterday. Uh, and then we have app config. This is a new file which you may see. I mean, in case you are coming from you already been doing Angular, so this is where we define the new way to configure router. And I'll show you a small snippet of how we used to do it and now what is changed. Now, every Angular application needs an root component. So as we are talking about now, standalone component, it's the root component which we need. Before, I mean, before like when a standalone component were not available, we used to define a root module, root Angular module. You don't have to worry about module anymore. So now everything is standalone. And that's where this standalone APIs come into existence or come into the picture. So you don't have to worry about modules. So this is our root component. Like this will be the first component which will be loaded. And you can see this, like, for example, this selector are nothing but the HTML tags. So let's talk a little bit about what components are, right? As we are on component. So whenever you create your website, right, or you create a product for your company, so what you create actually, what basically you do. So you create small small parts which is like your probably your HTML tags, right? I mean, even if you just remove like just don't think about component. Let's talk about the basic HTML, right? So what you actually do on your website. So use HTML tags and then you render something. With component, actually, you can create your own HTML tags. So here we are creating our own custom HTML tags, and those HTML tags render something same as the HTML tags, right? If I say div, it means there will be a container, and then I can actually put whatever I want inside that div. So similarly, this org root is an HTML tag which will render some content when used on my template. So this is the root one. As I said, this is the first component which will be loaded. So you can see in index.html, we have this org root, right? I mean, this is a mistake which I made. So I just like chose org as my uh, domain, so the main domain root one. So all the components which will be created will have prefix as org. We'll change it. Let's change it. I mean, I don't want to keep it as org. But yeah, so this is what we are going to do. When we talk about component, we create custom HTML tags, which will render something, which will have some logic, which will be executed once we use them on our template. Then you need to write unit tests as well, right? So these are the default unit tests generated for us, and it uses something called testbed, which we'll probably talk about later on, right? So we'll of course try to go through a little bit of testing as well. And this is spec.ts where you will write all this testing scenarios for your component. I mean, it's not for the entire app. I mean, that's end-to-end test which is available as this E2E, right? So here we are talking about unit test. Your component can have its own style. I mean, you can decide to override, but the global ones are actually available. And then in case you want to override something which is very specific to your HTML tags, then you can do you can write those HTML you can write those styles here. And there is a way how you should not the way you will not end up overriding something from global scope. So there is a way, we'll talk about it. As I mean, that's the way generally I ask the other teams to follow as well. So it's And then we have another component. So if you see, we have something called router outlet, and then we have something called org nx welcome component, which is here actually. So if you see, the selector name is org nx welcome. Uh, and this component has some templates which will be rendered once you run this application. And in case you have some route, so for example, if you have home, contact us, these are what you mean by routes is actually your navigation, right? So if you have multiple navigation, of course, this router outlet is required. We'll talk about it. Don't worry about it as of now. So yeah, so this is your template, the final template, which will be rendered once we run our application, because this is being referred here, right? So org nx welcome is referred here. And you can also use one more thing. I mean, told you about few the installations which you have to do yesterday, right? So we talked about NX console as well. But don't miss Angular language service. So Angular language service is something which will give you all this intelligence. So you can see, I think the version which I have right now should be the latest one. Yep. So this is 16.0.0. This is the latest version I have. And in case you're working on an older version, probably you can choose something. Let's say if I'm working on version 15, probably you can choose version 15. It will not, I think, create any issue even though you use the latest one. So this Angular language service is something which gives me all the IntelliSense. You can see I can press control. I mean, I'm right now pressing control, so I can see there is a link which gets activated, and then I can navigate to another component. So this is possible using Angular language service. And even if I write my code, for example, let's remove this and let's. So even if when I'm typing my code and if you're wondering from where this is coming up, this is all coming because of Angular language service. And in case you're not able to see this all this IntelliSense in your VS Code right now, just go ahead and install this Angular language service and you will be able to see it as well. So this is the last thing, not the last thing, but this is one of the important thing which you need to have once you set up your environment. And this is something which is available for the JetBrains IDE as well. So you don't have to worry about that. If you're not using VS Code, you will not have it. It's not like that. So that's available for the other tools as well. So cool. So this is the workspace. Now let's go ahead and run this. So let's go back. And so there's one. Let's do one thing first. This prefix name, right? I mean, let's talk about that as well for a second. So there are different components decide to have their HTML template tags, or as I can say, selectors, right? So the selectors are nothing but, as we said, HTML tags, right? So Angular says that you should always have a prefix when you create an HTML tag or you name a selector. Other frameworks ask you to do something like this. So, for example, if I'm writing React component, they tell you to do everything in capitals. There is a reason behind it. I mean, why they ask you to do it. Let's say if I keep it root. So there are chances that in case you create a component, the selector property or the HTML tag which you end up creating may conflict with the HTML tags which exist, and those, they don't want this to happen, right? So that's why they tell you that you should have a selector in a specific way. So here Angular tells you to have a prefix. So this org is actually a prefix which is configured into your, there are multiple places. So first is, let's say, project.json. So you see here the prefix is here. So I'll say this is e-commerce app, so I will use the prefix as e-commerce. Sorry, I just closed it somehow. So I'll change ecom here. Let me just zoom in a little bit, probably in case someone is not able to see it. But yeah, so we change it here. And as we change it here, we have to also change it at some places. Second one is ESLint RC, because of course there are times when we make mistake, right? And we make mistake, and then we have to rectify it. For example, you create a new app and then you decide, you saw, so I missed it. I mean, I created the prefix which probably doesn't match what we want to do. So you can go ahead and change it for sure. So first place, go to project.json, change it here. Then you go to ESLint RC, change it here. So you can see this prefix is here. One more thing, you can have multiple prefixes as well. I mean, this prefix is used when you create a new component. So this prefix will be used. But let's say you decide to have multiple types of prefixes. You can actually define it here. So you can actually have prefix as an array, and then you can say comma, and you can say, let's say if I wanted to do like have both or support both for some time, because it gives you a linting error. So if I just keep it ecom, let's do that. So let's keep it as ecom, and let's run the linter. So to run the linter, so Kaushal has a question. So you are starting with Angular. So Kaushal, I will suggest go with free code camp course because this is a little bit advanced one. This is not going to be like very basic level, and which I have already covered there. So that's I don't want to repeat the content, but uh, go with that, and then this recordings will be available, so you can always come and watch this. So just go with the free code camp one first. So here I can run the linter using, of course, the nx command. So I can say npx, but I mean, I'm not a big fan of CLIs. I mean, but I just don't want everyone to actually learn something new. So I can do it from here. So for example, I can say, okay, I want to run lint and I want to run it on this workspace. And this is the command. So it Annex console tells me, okay, this is the command, just go ahead and use it. So I don't have to like remember all those commands. So linter, what you mean by linter is linters are something which will try to identify any potential errors inside your code base, right? So they have some predefined rules, and then one of the rule is that you should have your prefixes which starts with this. So for example, right now I said it starts with ecom. So now I have an error. So it says the selector should start with one of those prefixes. One of these prefixes, ecom is one of them. uh, let's say we for example, you already created a prefix which now, of course, it's being used everywhere. And in future, what you want is you want to remove them incrementally. You don't want to just replace everywhere, right? I mean, because remember, once you update your prefix on this line, you have to do two things, right? You have to first go ahead and change your selectors into each component here. And then you have to make sure that these selectors are updated everywhere this component is being used. So that's a big task. So it's not that simple, right? That's it's not that easy that like just like upgrading these prefixes. You may break something unintentionally. So what we can do is we can say, okay, I'll just have this both as the selector. So I can say, okay, either one of them. I mean, let's run it again. So I can say, okay, just go back to NX console. I can say run lint workspace and this. And now you will see that you will not get any error. So because org is also a valid prefix. But in future now, as we have changed inside the project.json, all the new component will be created with this prefix. And then you can remove this org prefix incrementally in future. I mean, you can create a backlog and then remove it. And if it doesn't affect anything and you are fine with that, just leave it as it is, right? I mean, there is no harm. And as we say, don't touch anything which works. Believe me, I don't believe in that, but yeah, sometimes it's the best choice we have. So it's okay. So we created our we saw like how we can change prefix. We saw um, the our the different files. We went through the folder structure. Now let's run it. So to run it again, I will go to my friend NX console. Let me just hide this because I don't use GitLens that much right now. We won't be using it anyways. Remote Explorer we can hide. So we have less things to worry about here. Run and debug. Let's hide it as well. Source control is fine. GitHub is okay. Docker, that's fine. So I just wanted NX to be up. Let's run this up. And as we already have only one project, NX is saying that is this the project you want to serve? And let's go and run it. So now we are serving our project locally. Thank you. Thank you, Kaushal. Thank you for your kind words. And enjoy the course. And once you're done, do come here because this is very important. You should learn about NX. NX has become more than I mean, there was a time when Angular CLI used to be used everywhere, but I think over the years, NX or NX Dev Tools has grown into enterprises. So if you want to work in enterprises, I think you should learn about NX. Cool. So now our application is available on localhost 4200. Let's go and see what we have here. So of course, the default page, which we saw yesterday, and we just came on the same page, right? So we have the same page. There are a few links related to learning materials, blogs, YouTube channel. You can go through it in your free time. But let me just tell you, the nx.dev is the official website where you can learn more about everything. So you have your documentation, you have your communities. NX also has NX Slack. Just a second, I'll just close my windows. Ah, sorry. So actually, I live in a village. So, and there is a moat outside my house. And in during summers, you get like so many frogs, and they keep like making sound entire night, or they are just supporting my live stream. So it's okay. So we serve our application, and let's see how to structure our app. So this is the minimum, right? So this is the minimum you have to create. I mean, we have not added any code so far, but as we are going to create an e-commerce app, of course we need few things, right? I mean, we have to have a product list, we have to have our homepage. So what is how we are going to structure the project? So let's go ahead and define that. So I'll just use that skelly draw. Um, yes, Kaushal. So I'll add more because this live stream is going to be from Monday to Friday. I mean, in case you're joining for the first time, so this streams will be every Monday to Friday, 10 p.m., 10 to 11 CET. Based on my availability, in case I miss, probably I'll just do it on weekends if I'm available. But for time being, it will be just Monday to Friday. Okay, so this is the structure which we created yesterday. If you were there on the live stream, I mean, I'm not going to go with the design system part. So my project structure will look like, let's say, if you have this is my root, right? So this is my root project or application, and then everything will be actually inside library. So you will learn how to split your code base where your app is like a very thin shell, and most of the your project are actually split into multiple features. This actually brings some advantages as well. So we'll talk about it, but for time being, let's remove this design system from here. And mm, so what we are going to have inside our application, so we'll have a homepage, right? So where we will see our menu bar or navigation, where we'll have different categories for project product. We may have a small logo like on homepage. Then we'll have our products, right? So for product, we may have a product list, and then of course we are going to have a cart where all the products you add into cart, it's going to be there. And what else? So probably we will add more features once as we move on. So let's define this structure first. So this is not going to be actual code, but this is going to be the libraries which we'll be using. And this we'll also see how we actually generally do it in enterprises, or the way I recommend you should do it in enterprises. So the first one is home. So I'll go ahead and create a library. And again, for types of libraries, there is already a YouTube video on my YouTube channel. So there are two parts of this video. So you can go to YouTube, my channel, which is Santosh, that talks with Santosh. I mean, the same channel which you are accessing right now, and your channel. Let me show you. I think it's if you go to playlist, there is something called building and publishing Angular libraries. So here I have like covered how you can create libraries using Angular CLI and how you can do it using NX as well. So the libraries which we are going to create right now is it's called buildable libraries. So I'm not going to go into detail again that what is buildable, what is publishable. We'll just create the buildable libraries here. So let's see how we can do that. By default, when you create a new library inside NX, they are not buildable. So let's see, right, how we can figure that out. So let's go to generate, and let's say I want to create a library. You see this buildable. So this is not enabled by default. So the way I recommend it is once you start working on a new project which uses NX, the first thing which you should do is go to nx.json. Here you have something called Angular library. Go ahead and say buildable to true. So in our workspace as well, I mean the project which I have at work, we actually missed this buildable true when we started the project. So and at the end we ended up like updating all the project to be buildable, but we enabled this flag. So in case like developers create new libraries, they create a buildable library by default. So in future, but we ended up like migrating all the libraries to buildable libraries anyways. So once you create this or make this as default, and when you create a new library, now let's go back and say, okay, I want to create a new library, and you see this buildable is checked. So this is default now. So any library which you create will be default, and we want this library to be named home. I want it to be on the default directory, which is libs. I will not touch this. Buildable true. Uh, I I want this actually to be lazy loaded, but the thing is, it uses router module for child. So I don't. We want to be have like we want to have a singleton. Sorry, not singleton. Standalone. We want to use standalone APIs, so we'll not use this one. And publishable, probably we'll talk about publishable later on, not right now. But do we need routing configuration? As we have standalone project, we will not use this default ones right now. Let's go with name and go with buildable. So these are two things which we need, so we can see how we add the new routes, so we don't have to like see all these things already created for us. And anyways, we are not going to use the old APIs. So with NX console, the advantage of NX console is actually tells you what files will be updated, what files will be created. So all these files will be created for us, and there are two files which will be updated: package.json, tsconfig. So let's go ahead and run this command, and we will create our first library, which is home, and inside this we have the home library. Also, I'll tell you about like as I'm talking about structuring our apps. So NX already also has DDD plugin, so which is called domain driven design, which is by Manfred. So Manfred Starr actually talks a lot about how to structure, or sorry, how to architect your applications. So this library actually does the same. So in case I'm also following the domain driven design, right? So I'm trying to split the domains into multiple libraries, and this plugin will do the same for you. So if you want to introduce some standard, you can actually go ahead and use DDD plugin as well, or just have your own handcrafted ones, and you can just improve, or you can just expand on this, right? I mean, as you need in future. So right now we have this home library, and let's see what we have here. So we have a home module. As we are going to use standalone application, and we are going to have standalone components everywhere. I will just simply delete this. So I'm not going to use this home module, because we are going to have a application without modules. No new modules to be created. So now we have home. Of course, we need navigation, right? Of course, everyone needs navigation. It means we need some kind of UI library. So what we are going to do is we are going to introduce Angular material. I mean, the Angular material is heavily tested and production ready component UI component library. And most of the enterprises which you see is actually need a design system which is heavily tested. And Angular also has something known as Angular Material CDK, right? I mean, which where you can use the material APIs to create your own component as well. So let's see. I will go to the homepage. And in case you have used Angular in past, you may already know about Angular Material, but so Angular Material already has a lot of components. One of them is navbar. So let's see. And menu. So no, no, I'm not looking for this. So they have toolbar and they have something, uh, some schematics. So if you go to schematics, and they have there are few built-in components. One of them is navigation. So if you see this generates a navigation with header, a sidebar, and a placeholder, right? So all this is actually created by default for us. So that's very nice of Angular material. So you don't have to like invest much time doing this. So let's go ahead and create our first component, but we have to add Angular material. And how to add Angular material into NX? With Angular CLI, this it's a command. It's just a single command. If you see Angular material getting started, this is the command which you have to run once you have an Angular CLI project. But for Angular material, sorry, for NX, it works in a different way. The first thing, there are two steps which is needed. So first step is you have to install Angular material manually. So let's go ahead and do that. I'll just say npm install Angular material, and this should be my dependency. So let's install Angular material. And in case you want to, you forget about this command. I mean, I generally do forget about this. So I generally just Google adding Angular material to NX. So the answer is actually available here, and you do actually, this is actually done in two space. First is of course you install Angular material, and then you do this. So okay, and then you run this command and next generate Angular material ng-add. So it will add Angular material to the default project, which is the first one, right? So right now we have a single project, Santosh Workspace. So Indigo Pink, we'll go with the default. I mean the pre-built theme. We are not going to create our custom theme. And then set up Angular material typography style. I will say, okay, go ahead and use this. Yes. Do we need Angular animation? Let's go ahead and use it. Maybe probably we'll end up doing some animation in future. So it will, yeah, package is installed. Project name is required. Okay. So I'll say hyphen project name. What was that? Project. Okay. Hyphen project equals to the project name. So this is the project. It will add all the files which we need. True. Include enable animation, and I think this would be okay. So it will install two packages. I think this is already installed probably. Angular CDK and Angular material. So you can see you have Angular material here and Angular CDK. These are two packages which comes from Angular material, and those they are already installed. The command is actually right now configuring few things which we may need to actually do manually if you don't want if you miss this. So if you see now, it has actually done few configuration for us. So it actually adds a module, or it adds a service to provide animation to our application. And then on HTML, it actually adds your Google APIs for font. You can see this is for icon, this for CSS2, and this is for fonts. So it's all done manually, sorry, automatically for us. And there is no angular.json file available here because this is Material is thinking that this is an Angular project. Of course, it's an Angular project, but it is inside an NX monorepo. So there is no angular.json file, and it actually doesn't throw any error. You can see that. And you have style.css where it actually adds some default styling, and this is our global style, so we get full width. All the components which we have has actually full height. You can see height 100%. And yeah, so now we have Angular material added into our project. Let's go ahead and do one thing. I'll just commit this code and then switch to another branch. I'll say this is git commit m, and let's create the repository as well. I think I already have a repository. I think I have to just push this code. So in case in future you want to follow up, if you want to see this code, you can just take this repository and you get all the code. You don't have to worry about like following up this video just to see the code. So you don't have to worry about it. And once we complete the project, we will just like have it inside this repository. So I have an organization. You can actually go ahead and start this project. So you can go to, sorry. Yeah. So Angular NX NgRx course. So this is the repository. I think I had this one, but no, let's create another one. I'll just override it. New repository. Owner repository name. I'll call it as e-commerce app, and this should be public. Create repository, and I'll just push the code here. So we already have a code base with uh, uh, yeah, git enabled, so we don't have to initialize a new git repository. So I'll just say git add, probably let's stage. Yeah, so all the files are stage, and I'll call it as initial commit because the next part of the code which we'll write, probably we'll write it in another branch. So let's sync up onto this repository. Let me share this as well. Probably hope it does not. YouTube does not actually removes this link. And just in case actually YouTube has removed this comment, you can actually just see it in the chat or on your screen right now. So this is the repository where you will see all the code base. Let's go ahead and add this into, let's push this code. So I already have this branch as main branch, and let's push, and that's it. So we have our code available on GitHub, so you can always refer the code here. And we still have 7 minutes, so probably let's see what we can do. I'll create a new branch and I'll call it as feature add navigation. Oh, sorry, I made a mistake. So I'll just git branch -m, and I'll call it as feature add navigation. So I just updated my branch. So just in case you're wondering what this command is, so this is to update my branch name. So I'm saying, okay, git branch -m. Just make sure that you have not pushed this branch before you try to rename it, because of course, if you already have pushed this branch, then of course you get a new branch and you may have to push it again. So as I had just created this branch and I found that, okay, I have made some spelling mistake in my branch name. I just did that. So once I push this, I'll just have this branch name, not this branch name, which was add navigation. I mean, just somehow I just made a mistake. And let's add our navigation menu. So we saw that NX Angular material already has some schematics to create that. So let's do that and create our first navigation bar. I'll go to Angular material. Let's go to schematics, guides, schematics. You can go to guides and then schematics. We need navigation. So I'll just click on navigation, and this is the navigation schematic which I want. And I want this navigation to be created inside home. Should we create inside home or in the root? I think it should be in the root, right? Because we can add all the navigation there. So I'll create here a new component, and let's go to integrated terminal. You cannot just use this command directly, because if you see, I mean, let's so for adding Angular material, we had to do something like this. So we have to change our command accordingly here. So I can say npx nxGenerate Angular material, which already is here. So we have Angular material, navigation, and component name. So I can say, rather than ng, we can say npx nx generate, and then we just need to change the component name. So I'll call it as a main nav. This is my main navigation bar, and it should create. Okay. Let's see if it has created it as a standalone one. Yes, it is standalone. So we created a new component, a standalone component. I mean, it's actually we just use the schematic, but by default now Angular material does creates a standalone component, which is cool. So we have our main nav bar available now. Let's see what we have here. So okay, there is some mat side nav container. There is nav bars, which is here. So you can see link 1, link 2, link 3, and it is giving us some error that no pipe found with name async. And to do that, we have to do one thing. We can just go ahead and add common module here, and it should fix this error. So let's save this, and this error is gone. So you can see the red lines, red squiggly lines, which you could see inside your editor is gone. So we have a sync pipe available as well. Let's try to use this nav bar on our main component. So we have app component.html. This is the main component. I'll do two things. I'll just remove this as of now and just put the new component, which is, you remember we changed our prefix. So this is the time to verify that that prefix works or not. So let's see our selector. Ecom, yay. So we actually now using the new prefix which we have provided. So ecom main nav. Let's go ahead and use this as an HTML tag. Okay, somehow it's the command which we have. But anyways, so we can say not ecom main nav. So we go to HTML, put this tag, and it is giving us an error. So why it is giving an error? So whenever you have a component which you want to use inside another component, you have to register that component as well. Without registering that component, this component will never know that this component exists. I mean, I'm just using so much this, but what I mean is, here we want to use main nav inside app component.html, right? So app component.html should know about main nav, and how to make it available is by registering this component inside app component. So to register this component, there is only one step which is required. So you have to copy main nav component, go to app component.ts, go to imports array, add this component here. Make sure you import this. So of course you can use VS Code and just the VS Code IntelliSense to import it. So now this component is imported. Now let's go ahead and see, and you can see the error is gone. The this red squiggly is gone, and now it actually identifies our new component. So there is one file which is not saved. Which one is this? Yeah, this one. So now, whenever you have a new component which you want to use inside app component.html, or you want it to be available inside any other component, you have to register that. And the way to register is go to imports array and add that component into imports array of the component where you want to use the other component. So this is the registration part. Now let's go ahead and run our application again to see if whatever we have done so far works or not. So I'll just run serve our application again, and it's almost the time. So we were able to like create a new integrated monorepo. We saw the structure. We created a new library. We saw that we should always create a buildable library by default. We added Angular material. We created a nav bar using Angular materials default schematic, and now we are just serving that application to see if the navigation bar which we created works or not. So yes, we have our application here, Nicholas 4200, and let's go to the browser and let's close all this and refresh this page. And yay, so you have your navigation bar created without much hassle. I mean, you don't have to write all the CSS. You can see even like it is responsive. So let's do inspect, and here it is. So you created just a responsive nav bar using Angular material without writing even a single line of code. If you count command as code, that's fine. So you just wrote few commands, and then you already have this navigation bar created for you. So this is enough for the day. So we'll continue tomorrow. What we will do is we'll add more libraries, and then we will try to bring our API to fetch the data. So that's for tomorrow. So thanks again for joining. And can you fix the cursor logging issue? Sorry for some cursor logging. I mean, I'm not sure which cursor you're talking about, but just feel free to message me on probably LinkedIn or Twitter. So I know about this. I mean, in case something is bothering you, just let me know what I'm not able to understand actually what this cursor logging is. So, but yeah, do message me. I mean, I'll take care of it. So that's it for the day, and see you tomorrow. So have a good night. I mean, in case you're joining from India, I mean, thanks again for joining. I mean, it's pretty late, but you joined, and I'll push this code so you already know the repository. In future, if you want to download this project, you will be able to do that by just going to this repository, and I'm going to have it inside multiple branches, so you can always refer the code at particular time. So right now we just created a nav bar which is part of another project, so another branch. So if you want to see what the code looks like at this point of time, you can actually go ahead and do that. Bye bye.